Thanks for coming from the Keys.
Yep. All right, guys, before we get started, I think in summary what he said is this is your best tackle shop anywhere. Buy all your gear here, save big. Okay? That's what it boils down to, and everything that you've done here, you're already credited to that as well. So all good stuff right there. Before I get going here, guys, a big hand to the entire Chaos crew, Marshall's entire team here. Okay? They also wanted me to mention that they've got some delicious homemade smoked macaroni and cheese out there for you. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Again, my name is Captain Mike. A lot of familiar faces. Thank you so much for coming back. A lot of new faces. I'm real excited about that. A little bit of history about me, and then we're going to get right into this because there are a lot of really cool bits of information that I want to share with you regarding planer fishing. So I'm the founder of Florida Sport Fishing Magazine, creator and host of Florida Sport Fishing TV, which is currently airing every single week on Bally Sports, formerly Fox Sports. We also have a very active YouTube channel with over 500 videos. If you're not already watching our videos on YouTube, please do. Additionally, we have a streaming channel with over 350 instructional videos, exclusive content that you're not going to find anywhere else. It is a small, very small monthly fee, which is what Marshall was referring to. I ask of you, if you walk away at the end of today and you learn something from this seminar, please take the time to join our streaming channel as well, because there's a lot of great content on there that I'm sure will help you. The web address is FSFTV.com, short for Florida Sport Fishing TV. Real easy to remember, okay? So let's get into this here. Planer fishing. Who has ever planer fished before? Okay, it looks like almost everybody. Perhaps the most popular, okay, of all fisheries here in South Florida and certainly in this region. And, you know, before I get ahead of myself, I also just want to mention one other thing, that to all of the new faces, all of our previous seminars that we've done here, not only over the last few months since we've rekindled these events now that COVID's hopefully behind us forever, but all of the ones in the past are also on our streaming channel, so you can get caught up with all of those videos there as well. Again, let's get back into it. Planer fishing, one of the most popular fisheries here in South Florida, certainly in our region. Every single charter boat here in South Florida planer fishes. Okay, why? Anybody know why? Okay, because it's effective. Okay, it's effective at not only catching one species of fish, but at catching a wide variety of fish. The species that you may catch while planer fishing include sailfish, blackfin tuna, bonita, skipjack, cobia, dolphin, king mackerel, wahoo. Basically, if it's a pelagic fish and it swims somewhere in the middle of the water column, you are going to at some point catch it on a planer bait. Okay. However, successful planer fishing really takes a lot of skill. It's not as easy as just going out there, putting a planer in the water and thinking suddenly you're going to catch fish. There's so much more to it. And what I want to do tonight is really just spend the time and walk you through all of the different elements, okay? Including setting up the boat for planer fishing, the tackle that you're going to need for planer fishing, and of course the planers themselves, and the latest and greatest tactics for fishing planers, because a lot has changed. Over the recent years, planer fishing has gone to a whole new level, okay, a whole new level. And you may still be doing it the old way, and that is effective. You know, if you're doing something and it's working and you're catching fish, by all means stick with it. But I'm certain that by the end of tonight, you're going to go, oh, I didn't know you can do that. Or, oh, I should be doing that. Okay, and that's what my goal is here. So first, let's talk a little bit about planers. Planers come in a lot of different sizes. Everything from something like this tiny number 2 planer to a number 32 planer. Okay, the planer size is not rated by the blade. It's rated by the weight. So that's a 2-pound lead on this planer, hence 32, and a 2-ounce lead, hence a number 2 planer. And they come in a wide variety of sizes in between the 2 and the 32. They all essentially do exactly the same thing. A planer swims just like this through the water column. The weight keeps it down. Your main line is attached to the ring at the front of the planer, and then you have a long leader that comes off the back of the planer, and it'll swim through the water. It'll track through the water in this position. When a fish strikes the bait, the planer straightens out, and now that planer is no longer an issue, and you reel in the fish. Okay, it's pretty much that simple, the fundamentals of it at least. Why do we planer fish? You know, think about the summertime heat here in South Florida. It's 110 degrees outside. We're practically melting. Okay, the water is practically boiling. And you're trying to target these game fish out there, and if all you're doing is fishing baits right on the surface, you're going to miss a lot of bites because there's a lot of these pelagic predators that are deeper in the water column. The water is a little bit cooler, it's a little bit darker, it's more comfortable, and not only are the predators there, but the bait is there, which of course explains why the predators are there as well. So it's absolutely essential that you create a spread when you're out here trolling that not only presents baits up on or near the surface, but also presents baits deeper in the water column. It's almost like having two trolling spreads or a three-dimensional trolling spread. And understand that there's a lot of variation when it comes to planer fishing because everybody has a different boat. He's got a 32-foot boat. I've got a 39-foot boat. He's got a 67-foot boat. He's got an 18-foot boat, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of variation, and it's impossible to share every little detail that's relevant to each and every different size boat in a mere 90 minutes. But we're going to do our best. And obviously, you can take what you learned tonight and you can adapt it to your own application. So when we planer fish here, we're fishing relatively close to the coast, right? Because of our reef lines. Our reef lines parallel the coast. There's 3 reef lines, patch reefs essentially, that parallel the coast. And that's where not only all of the charter boats, but most of the recreational anglers go out here looking for action because along the reef, you can catch all of those species that we talked about earlier. And if you're looking for action, I would rather be in an area where there's a chance for a wide variety of species rather than, we'll say, going to 1,500 feet way offshore looking for dolphin where you're putting all your eggs in one basket. If you don't catch those dolphin offshore, what are you going to catch? Nothing. Okay, if you're not sure, let me make it clear. If you don't catch those dolphin offshore when you're trolling for dolphin, you're not going to catch anything. Okay, however, when you go out here planer fishing, like I said, you just don't know what you may catch. And you may be targeting a certain species. You may say, hey, I want to go out here and catch a wahoo, but you may catch kings, you may catch blackfins, you may catch sailfish, dolphin, or any combination thereof. So it really is a catch-all type of tactic, a very effective tactic, okay? And that's why all of the charter boats do it, because of course they want to put their customers on the meat. They want to catch fish for their customers. But if you do this wrong, it is going to be the most frustrating experience that you ever had, because this is not a joke. You know, you're dealing with heavy pieces of equipment, heavy tackle. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot could go wrong. So it's real important that you set the stage up front for doing everything as right as you possibly can. And understand, you know, I'm the kind of angler, I like to control everything that I can control. Look, I can control my reels. I can control the line on my reel, my terminal tackle. I can control my presentation behind the boat. I can control how prepared I am, the boat itself, how prepared the boat is. But there's 2 things that I cannot control. I cannot control the fish or the weather, right? Those 2 factors. So I've learned a long time ago, I'm not even going to try that. I'm going to focus all of my efforts on controlling everything that I can. And here, especially off of our coast, who fishes off of Broward County? Okay, almost everybody, or certainly a majority of you guys fish here off of Broward. Man, the fishing here is tough, isn't it? Okay, it's tough. Yes, you can go out here and put a good catch together. Yes, you can go out here and be successful, but it's tough. It's a tough place to fish. There's a lot of pressure. There's more and more people moving to this area than ever before. That means, and you know, truthfully, everybody who moves here is like, I want a boat. I'm going to get a boat. I'm going to get a boat. I've never had a boat, but I want a boat because now I live in South Florida. So there's so many people who are, and they'll sell anybody a boat, by the way. You guys know that, right? You don't need to know how to drive a boat. You never even have to step foot in a boat. You walk into a dealer and give them your card or your check or whatever, they're going to sell you a boat. So it's crazy what's, goes on out here. But the pressure is higher than it's ever been before. The fisheries are depleted, okay? You have pollution as a factor. Still, you have underwater pipes that are pumping sewage into the ocean. I don't want to talk about all of the negative, but I'm being a realist, okay? This is really what's happening, and it really is challenging. So this means that you really need to be dialed in now more so than ever before. It's more important now, more than ever, that you're as dialed in as you can be. And even when you are, doesn't mean that you're going to be successful. I've heard horror stories of guys going out here and running, 5 trips in a row, and 4 of those trips catching donut. Donut means 0. Catching nothing, okay, in 4 trips. I don't know if I could do that. I'd sell my boat, okay? I mean, that's just absolutely terrible. So, you really, really got to be dialed in. I just can't stress that enough. Planer fishing also, for the sake of display purposes in our seminar tonight, we're going to talk about a 4-rod spread. We're going to talk about fishing 2 planers and 2 flat lines. However, you may be able to fish 6 flat lines up on top and 2 planers. There are some fisheries, like up in the Carolinas, where they'll fish 4 planers. Imagine that. Anybody ever fish 4 planers? Okay. It's a whole different animal. The reason that they can fish 4 planers in those fisheries and multiple planers is because they're not doing a lot of turning. They're not turning a lot, okay? It's a lot of straight line type of fishing in open water. Here, we got to turn a lot. You're only fishing in that 100 to 200 foot is really the zone right there, 100 to 200 feet. Sometimes a little shallower, sometimes a little bit deeper, but it's not very wide, so we're turning a lot. And if you get a bite, and if you don't turn back on those fish, you're driving away from the fish. Think about that in your head. You get a bite on a planer, and if you continue to keep going, bye. You're literally leaving the fish behind you. So you have to turn the boat and get back on top of them. That will explain to you why when you go out here and you see one of the Bolo guys or any of the other charter boats out here, they're constantly zigzagging and circling, okay, because they're trying to stay on that bite. Okay, remember that. So, like I said, a lot of variation. We're going to talk about a simple 4-rod spread. However, if you could add more rods, depending on the tackle that you have, depending on the people on your boat, well, certainly I encourage you to do that. But remember that, you're flagged, remember that it's more important to fish less lines and avoid tangles and control your entire spread than it is to just have a whole bunch of lines out there because you think if you have more baits in the water, you're going to catch more fish and end up spending a large portion of your day untangling lines and dealing with all of that. And every second that you're spending doing anything other than fishing, you're wasting time. In other words, if you're untangling or crossing lines or anything like that, you're wasting valuable time. Okay, so keep it simple. Keep it simple, but do it right and do it effectively. Now, before we even dig any deeper into planer fishing, I want to talk a little bit about the baits. The title to this seminar is Planers and Strip Baits. Okay, that's what the title is. So we're not going to talk about using artificial lures, using live bait, using ballyhoo, because you can incorporate all of those different offerings into planer fishing as well. Okay, such as spoons are very, very popular, fished off of planers. All right, rigged ballyhoo are incredibly popular and incredibly effective, fished off of planers. You can slow troll some lightweight live baits off of planers. Lots of different things that you can do. However, the most popular offering off of a planer is a bonita strip. Okay, bonita strip. So I want to talk to you a little bit about bonita strips because it's important to know the ins and outs of bonita strips before we get into setting the spread, etc. Because without bonita strips, you're not planer fishing. okay? Or you're not going to catch anything, obviously. You need the bait. Two ways to acquire bonita strips. One is to go out there, catch fresh bonita, and prepare the bonita strips yourself. Nothing is better than fresh bait. Option B is you walk over to that Silver's freezer right there. You open the door, and they're already sold pre-packaged, okay? And as a matter of fact, you can even buy bonita strips that are pre-rigged. So if you don't want to rig your own, if you're hesitant to do that, buy them pre-rigged. That's an option. But again, I always lean toward the side of getting and fishing the freshest bait that you possibly can. But cutting bonita strips effectively is not as easy as you may think. And I don't know how many people here really know how to cut a bonita strip effectively. For example, did you know, by show of hands, that the top of the bonita strip is actually the bottom of the bonita? Okay? So, again, that small difference can make a huge difference on the water simply because of the direction of the grain on the flesh, right? Otherwise, your bonita strip will wash out way too quickly, okay, way too quickly. So it's the small little details like that that make a difference. What I would suggest, of course, if you can go out, because bonitas are plentiful. They're likely the most plentiful fish out here. And if you can go out here and catch a bunch of bonitas and cut your own strips, you know, there's nothing better than that. Very easy to do. Fillet the bonita, trim it down till it's about an eighth to a quarter inch of flesh right on that fillet. Cut out all of the hard bony, you know, kind of areas. You can very carefully scrape it with a sharp knife, but just carefully because you want to keep all of that flesh even. You don't want that meat to be going up and down along that strip. You want that strip, and just for the, I'm going to leave these in the package here tonight because I don't want to go home smelling like bonita, okay? You want this to really be level, okay? You want it to be straight. You don't want it to have any indentations. How much time and effort you put into preparing your bait is going to play a big role in how successful you are at planer fishing. Because if your strips wash out very quickly, you're wasting your time. Also understand that bonita strips come in a lot of different sizes, right? Look at these. These are your typical bonita strips. And these bonita strips are more geared toward, right, toward wahoo, toward larger fish. I can tell you whenever I'm pulling planers and strip baits, see these? Doop. Okay, that's what I do with those. I'm not looking to catch little kingfish that are this big. If you're not big enough to eat my bait, then don't eat my bait. Okay, that's the way that I look at it. I'm going after the quality fish. I'm going to fish bigger baits, and that's how I'm going to rig. But understand that if you only have smaller bonita strips, you're going to need to modify your rigging technique a little bit because a large, you know, 9-0, 10-0, 11-0 hook may be too large for a 4 or 5 inch very small bonita strip. So again, your hook size is going to be dependent not only on the target species that you're looking to catch, but also on the bait size. For the sake of tonight's discussion, we're going to talk about larger strips. We're going to talk about, you know, most people will recognize this as a wahoo strip, but it isn't a wahoo strip. It's just a big bonita strip, and more likely to entice a larger predator because the reward is more worth the effort, right? If I'm going to run a country mile, I'd rather do it for a steak rather than a French fry. So I want to give them something that is really worth the effort of chasing down that bait, and I prefer to fish the larger baits, and that's definitely what I would recommend. So again, make sure you get yourself some fresh baits. You can buy them, and I'm going to tell you that there is this brand, Sea Spook Baits. I believe they're doing a bait rigging seminar here. Really nice baits. So exceptionally nice baits.
That's actually who rigged that bait.
Who? Somebody stand up. Please. Can you please stand up? Good. I didn't even know that. A big hand. That's a quality bait right there. It's cut properly. It's beveled properly along the edges, okay, right there. So whoever, again, did that really did a nice job. And at least you know if you're going to buy something. Okay, there you go. You know, if you're going to buy something, you know, again, just make sure this is it. Don't open a bait freezer somewhere, pull out bait strips, and you look at them and they're all gray and mushy and, they look like they've been in that freezer for 6 months or even longer, and don't even waste your money. Seriously, don't waste your money. So again, to get back into it, if you can go out and get your own baits, do it. If you need to buy baits, these are the ones to buy right here. Yes? So her question, Lee's question is, do the baits have to be salted? It does not hurt if you're going to preserve the baits. You could put a little bit of salt on the baits. I don't like to freeze baits. I like to fish them fresh. So if you know, for example, that you're going to be going out and, planer fishing, even, I'm going to tell you, before you go planer fishing, and I don't mean days before, the day of, just take a jigging rod and go to any local wreck and jig a few bonitas. They hang out all over the wrecks, and cut your own strips right on the boat before you're fishing. That's one way to do it. Or if you can get out there a couple days in advance. If you're going to vacuum seal them and preserve them, a little salt is definitely helpful. It's going to toughen up the baits, and they're not going to wash out as quickly. But don't overdo it. You put too much salt on the bait, and they end up turning that gray. Okay? Do you guys put salt on your baits? That's a secret. Ooh, sorry. A little chemistry. Okay, so they're doing something, because if they weren't doing something, they wouldn't look that good. Okay? So anyhow, like I said, make sure you have plenty of baits also, because when the bite's hot, you can blow through baits left and right. Don't go out there, with this, okay, and think you're going to go out there all day long fishing with one package. Okay, she needs a bigger house. Buy a lot of these, okay, because you're going to need them. I'm telling you, you can blow through a lot of baits. So, again, where we, primarily planer fishing, most of us fish right here at a Hillsborough Inlet or Boca Inlet, Port Everglades, maybe out of Miami somewhere, maybe a little bit further north, Boynton, but it's all pretty much the same. You go out the inlet, and you're pretty much starting to fish within a matter of minutes, right? Because it doesn't take very long to get out to 75, 80, 90 foot, as you're coming off that drop-off. So you're not running very far, and, you're spending a lot of time fishing. You may run to a different area, but that different area is going to be to the north or to the south. It's not going to be way offshore. Not to say that you cannot have a planer in your trolling spread when you're offshore dolphin fishing, because you can. And it is a great way to include a deeper bait in your dolphin pattern when you are offshore. But that's really the rarity. Most of us that are planer fishing are doing it right along the edge here, like I said, and anywhere from 100 to 200 feet. Even, you might zigzag and meander out to 300 feet, but for the most part, okay, you're going to be right in that zone there. So boat-wise, I run a 39-foot CV. Regardless of what boat you run, we only fish 2 planers, okay, 2 planers. And the trick, the most important thing, is remembering that you cannot fish 2 of the same size planers in the same position. If I fish a number 4 planer here and a number 4 planer here, and they're both in exactly the same position, what's going to happen when I turn the boat? Okay, I'm going to get into a big, fat tangle, and they're going to cross, and it's just a matter of time before I tangle. And I'm telling you, that's the last thing that you want. So it's real important to remember that your planers need to be staggered not only in weight and size, but in distance behind the boat. However, our planer rods are both rigged exactly the same way. Okay, they're both rigged. Regardless of what size planer, the rod itself is rigged exactly the same way. And understand that here, the vast majority of the time, we're fishing either a number 3 or a number 4 on one rod and a number 6 or a number 8 on the second rod. So 3 is 6 or 4 8. That's the vast majority of the time. There are, like I said, a lot of different size planers, different variations. The only time we'll generally fish a smaller one is when I'm looking for the bonita or the bullet blackfins or small blackfins, to catch some bait to make fresh strips, is we will fish a very small planer with a little spoon. like a little Clark spoon, and you can just troll that right around little wrecks or reefs, and you'll catch all sorts of little bonitas and stuff like that with the small planer. But when it comes time to targeting the larger fish, it's going to be the number 4 and the number 8 probably 90% of the time. Once you start getting into planers that are larger than that, and certainly Mac Daddy here, you're going to need a whole different class of tackle, okay, a whole different animal altogether. So let's talk about the tackle for a second. Who fishes planers off a bent butt rod? Okay, handful of people. I fish planers off a straight butt rod, and I highly recommend that you do as well. Why? Imagine this for a moment. I'm looking off the back of my boat right here. I've got a bent butt rod. It's pointed this way. You know, unless I'm really an experienced angler, I probably couldn't tell if that planer even tripped or not. The line, the angle of the line coming off the rod is going right into the water. And it's hard to look at that rod tip and go, did that planer trip? And it's much harder to even tell when you got a bite. And if you can't tell when you got a bite, I'm not talking about when you hooked a fish. I'm talking about when you got a bite and you missed a fish. You need to know that instantly. Otherwise, every second thereafter that is a complete waste of time because he ate your bait. Okay, it may be a ballyhoo, and again, we're not talking about ballyhoo, or it may even be a strip bait. You missed that fish altogether. And you didn't even know you missed that fish, and you may not even have anything left on. He could have cut you off for all you know. So you've got to fish a straight butt rod. I prefer an 8-foot rod rated for 50-pound line. I'm going to tell you that I built these rods specifically for planer fishing. They're called Captain Mike's planer rods. And we went through 4 prototypes before we finally nailed it. We did this about 4 or 5 years ago. And I think I was going to drive the crew here crazy because they built me a pair of rods. I'd go out, I'd fish them one day, and I'd come back and go, nope, not right. And then we'd build another pair. Nope, not right. And I can tell instantly as soon as I start pulling those planers if that rod is capable of doing what I need it to do. Because remember, you're putting a tremendous amount of strain on this rod. When you start pulling a number 8 planer at over 5 or 6 knots, there's a tremendous amount of strain on that rod. And if the rod can't handle it, well, you're just asking for trouble across the board. So you need something that's got a lot of beef, a lot. But something that isn't an absolute pool cue, that has no sporting quality whatsoever, okay, and that you can't even tell, you know, when you're getting a bite. These rods here that were specifically built, as I mentioned, for planer fishing, when I'm fishing, you can expect this rod literally to be bent over. And I want it to be bent over, okay, because I want to look right at that rod tip, and it's even bent over more than that. I just don't want to pull too hard here. So when you get a bite, you're going to see that right there. And because remember, this is not set it and forget it. To be successful at planer fishing, this is actively fishing. You're on it. Don't just set the planers and turn around and keep going forward and wait for the reel to start singing. That's not how this works. Okay, this is really requiring you to be involved. So having a clear understanding as to what's happening to your bait is essential. And a long rod that's capable of withstanding that much pressure is vital. So this is an 8-foot rod. Like I said, it's rated for 50-pound line. I cannot stress it enough how important a rod itself is in the entire equation. The rod has a slick butt on the bottom, this material. It's not foam, it's not cork, it's a slick butt. Anybody by show of hands want to know why it's a slick butt? I'm sorry? Get it out. So it's easy to just pull it right out of that rod holder, okay, versus if it was being, you know, if it was a foam rod or something like that. Plus, with all of that pressure, it would probably damage the foam. So a slick butt is definitely the way to go. The guides. The guides are also very important. They need to be able to withstand braid, but they also need to be large. This is not the place for roller guides, and you're going to know why they need to be large very shortly, okay? But they need to be relatively large. Look how big those guides are right there. Real important, okay? The reel, obviously equally as important. In this particular case, I have my planer rods matched to Shimano Tiagra 30s. I can put a tremendous amount of drag on this reel. Do you need a lot of drag when you're planer fishing? Yes. Okay. You absolutely do, because you're pulling large planers at a high rate of speed, a lot of pressure on the rod. And if your reel does not have enough drag, you know what's going to happen? You're going to hear this, right? And no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to apply enough drag on that reel. So nothing smaller than a 30 wide. Most guys will fish 50 wides. Okay, believe it or not. Some guys will even fish 80s. I mean, you know, if that's what you have, that's what you have. But a 30 wide is nice because it does have a lot of drag. It's got enough. And the whole outfit itself is still relatively light. Okay, it's not this super heavy duty, beefy, you know, stick where there's just no sport to it whatsoever. So you want something that's relatively light. The line, equally as important. And, you know, you'll notice I'm saying equally as important to everything because everything is equally as important. And you miss one of these little steps and you're out of luck, okay? So you have to really pay attention to each and every detail. The line, 65 or 80-pound braid. Nothing lighter, nothing heavier. You don't need 250-pound test braid. And don't try and do this with 30-pound test braid, okay? It's just not going to work. So 65 or 80-pound is ideal. Nothing lighter, nothing heavier. I like the high-vis braid because it's easy to track the line behind the boat. The fish is never going to see this braid. It can be whatever color you want it to be. There's no stealth here. This is not about stealth in this fishery at this point, the line on the reel. You do not need to have hundreds and hundreds or thousands of yards of braid on the reel. You could have a lot of backing and just the top few hundred yards could be braid. It's completely up to you, okay? But braid is absolutely essential. Now, the rig itself. Before we talk about the planer, let's talk, like I said, again about the actual rig. This rig is designed specifically for fishing strip baits. There are multiple components that go into this rig. Yes, it looks a little sloppy, but that's not because it's sloppy. It's because it's caught a bunch of fish and it's beat up, okay? But it will continue to catch fish. And understand, too, does that look like a bait fish? Does that look like anything that a fish would eat? It's absolutely amazing that fish eat this. I'm amazed every time I get a bite. I'm like, what in the hell did you think that was? I mean, look at that thing, right? It's just this blob of pink with some shiny stuff. But the way that we see it up here out of the water is, of course, different than what the fish sees below the surface. And once this is moving through the water and it has a big fresh bonita strip, you know, on it, it's just crazy what that appears to be. You know, that sea witch up on top creates a much larger profile in this bait. That's what that sea witch is for. It creates almost like a bubble around the bait. It gives it a larger profile and it also protects the bait. So right on the top of the rig, the very first component is something that you just heard me call a sea witch. They come in individual packages in a wide array of colors. They're right back there on that wall, okay? And a variety of different sizes, purples, blacks, you know, blues, pinks, again, chartreuse, all sorts of colors right there. And when you look at that sea witch, you'll notice that the top is much longer than the bottom as far as that hair is concerned. And you guys seem to all be relatively experienced planer fishermen, so you're familiar with these sea witches and you know that they're not rigged like this, they're rigged like this, okay, like a parachute essentially. Okay, so that's at the top. That's the very first thing that you have to put on your rig right there is that sea witch. The next component is a little rubber skirt. Okay, little rubber skirt. Again, these also are sold in a wide variety of different colors and sizes. Okay, in this particular case, we're going with a pink purple right there just to match the pink skirt, the pink sea witch, I should say. And that gets slid over top of what we call like a duster. It's just this little mylar thingamajig with a little weighted head with a little mylar skirt. Also available in numerous colors, okay? But it has some flash, right? And again, we call that like a duster. So that goes over top of that. And then the sea witch goes over top of that. And inside there somewhere, hidden, is a hook, a large hook. Some guys will fish 2 hook rigs. I fish 1 hook, one large, depending on the hook itself, it may be anywhere from a 9/0 hook all the way on up to an 11/0. VMC makes a perfect hook right here, a 9/0 for, rigging strip baits. The most important element of this hook is the long shank. That's the most important thing. Do not rig strip bait rigs with short shank hooks. You've got to rig it with a long shank hook. Very, very important. You will notice on my hook that I've got a little piece of wire, heavy Monel single strand wire. If you can't see that at the end of the seminar, come up, take a closer look. It goes in the eye of the hook. It wraps around the shank, and there's a little tag end about 2 inches long that comes off the top of the hook right there. Very easy to bend, very easy to work with. You can rig this yourself in about 3 seconds. It's literally that simple. There's a zillion variations of this right here. You can use whatever color combination you would like. When people say, what's the best color? I say the one that I just caught that fish on, okay? The most popular colors are certainly purples, pinks, chartreuse, blue. Is it a good idea if you're fishing 2 planers? Fish a dark and a light. If you see a pattern emerging, you certainly can switch over. Here's how I decide on color. I think about it, for starters. I don't think too hard, but I think a little bit. The closer that something is to the surface, the brighter it's going to be. The deeper that something is below the surface, the darker it's going to be. So if I was fishing purple and pink, which one would be closer to the surface? That's it, okay? That's how I decide on color. I think about where that bait is going to be presented in the water column, and that tells me how I want to determine what color that's going to be. Now, on a day when it's really overcast, everything is dark. It's really overcast, it's cloudy, maybe it's raining, maybe it's not, but it's dark. Low light conditions. Well, then I tend to lean toward darker colors. On the other hand, if it's very bright, sunny, middle of the day, water's crystal clear, everything is going to be reflecting light much better, right? So obviously I lean toward lighter colors. However, I will tell you that all colors catch fish. They'll all catch fish, and it's really a matter of making sure that your bait is rigged properly, it's tracking properly, it's swimming properly, and if there are fish in the area, eventually you'll get a bite and you'll catch something. And every time you catch one, make a mental note. What color did I catch that fish on? And it may, influence you as to what you're going to rig in the future. However, as a rule of thumb, it's always good to cover the bases by having some darks and some lighter colors. But like I said, they all catch fish. That's how I decide what to do. Now this rig here, and you can see I'm going to kind of work my way from the bait to the reel on how the entire rig works. You can rig that yourself, or if you purchase a pre-rigged bait, obviously on your leader would be a small little snap swivel where you would snap on this rig, because this is already pre-rigged. You bought the bait and it already has all of this on there. Maybe you have a small little snap. I try and avoid terminal tackle as much as I possibly can. What do I mean by that? You don't see any swivels here, do you? This is tied right to the end of my 50-pound leader. 50-pound monofilament. Now you may be saying, wait a minute, didn't you say you're targeting kingfish and wahoo? Absolutely. Okay, but you're not fishing wire? Absolutely not. I'm not fishing wire. I try not to fish wire as much as possible. And if you are fishing wire on your planer baits, you're missing the boat, my friends. You will absolutely increase your score, no question, by at least 5-to-1 by fishing mono versus wire on your planer baits. Are you going to get cut off every now and then? Yes, but not very often, because you see this long shank hook? That's why we fish the long shank hook. So you've got some resistance against being cut off. Okay, it's a long shank hook. There's some guys that even use, I forget even the name of it. It's an even longer hook, and it comes out another couple of inches. It's got a really, really long shank. But for the most part, a long shank hook like that is perfectly fine. You can add a swivel to the top of the hook. You can open that up with a vise and put a swivel, and that will give you an even extra inch of protection from being cut off. But you're going to get far more bites fishing monofilament than you will fishing wire. So I recommend that if you're going to buy rigged strip baits, make sure that they're rigged on the monofilament. After every fish, go like this, feel that. Anybody ever lose a fish because they broke a leader? One person raised their hand. 150 people here, and one person lost a fish because a leader busted. Let's try this again. Anybody ever lose a fish, okay, right, or get cut off, right? We all have. That's part of fishing, people. It happens. You don't win them all. Okay? You're not going to get them all, no matter what you do. Okay? You're not going to get them all. But as I mentioned in the beginning of the seminar, we control everything we can. And if I have a little fray or a little nick, and if I don't do anything about it, I shouldn't catch that fish. It's my fault. I should get cut off because I should have, I should have fixed it, and I didn't. So I'm the guy who makes sure that after every single fish, I feel that. And if it's a little chafed, a little nicked, cut it off. Cut off 6 inches, cut off 12 inches, retie it. It literally takes 2 seconds. Here, look. Whoop! It slid all the way up the line. I take a pair of snips, I cut that off. I cut off a foot, I retie the hook, I'm back in business. I mean, it literally took me a second. You know, you guys also know, if you've attended my seminars before, you also know that I've mentioned, I don't know how many times, where one fish can change the whole day, right? One fish can make a huge difference in the entire trip. When the fishing pressure is so great out here, and it's so challenging, there's days you go out, you may only get one bite. You may only have that one magic bite. Could be that 140-pound wahoo. It could be a big smoker king. Could be a sailfish, whatever. And if you lose that one fish because of something that you didn't do, man, you'll be kicking yourself in the butt, right? So avoid angler failure and tackle failure as much as you possibly can by doing those little things. So anyhow, that's the rig right there. I've taken my strip bait, which I've either purchased or caught and cut myself, whatever the case. And now I've got to put my strip bait right on the hook. This is where I've got this little tool that's going to be your probably best friend. It's called an ice pick. Okay, just a very simple ice pick. Anybody ever try to poke a hook through the skin on a bonita? Okay, very hard, and then the bonita goes, and it's all wrapped on the hook, and it's wrapped around your finger, and it's just like you just destroyed that bait altogether. You've got to keep that bait nice and clean. You know how much time and effort they put into catching and cutting those baits, right? For a reason, so we can catch fish on them. So it's important that that bait be treated with respect, because it's going to help us catch more fish. It really is. It's going to swim properly. It's not going to wash out as much. So you've got to put in the time, and a little tool like that is really going to make a big difference. I'm going to take my strip bait. And by the way, silver, blue, stripes, they all work. They all work. Some people prefer the silver, the white belly, so to speak, because they feel it has more reflection. Other guys will tell you that the pattern feels more natural. It's a matter of preference, right? But I find it hard to believe that if my bait is rigged properly and it's tracking properly, it's swimming properly, and I'm in the zone, and a wahoo or a kingfish or a blackfin or whatever swims up to it to eat it, and he goes, "Stop!" Where are the stripes? There's no stripes. I can't eat this. That's not going to happen. I'm going to tell you that right now. He's going to eat the bait. Okay, there's so many other elements that are just as important or more important than if that bait has stripes on it or not. Okay, that's just one factor. Anyhow, I'm going to take my strip bait, I'm going to take my hook, and I'm going to kind of try and do this over my shoulder, and I'm going to lay it right next to the bait. And I'm going to see where that hook is going to exit from that bait. And I can see it's going to exit right there by my thumb. Okay, and I'm going to mark that, and I'm going to use my little ice pick, and I'm going to poke a hole right through the skin, right in the center. Very nice and neat, poke a hole right in there. And that's where my hook is going to get inserted into that bait. right there. See that? Just like that. Now I'm going to do the same up on top for my wire. And I'm going to poke the wire right through there. And that little tag end of the wire, I can wrap around the top of the strip. This slides down over top of it, and it's that simple. It's done that neat, that quickly. And look, now I got my hook stuck in the skin. Okay. See what I mean? If you don't use an ice pick and you're sloppy, is that going to catch anything? Absolutely not. It's a perfect example right there of what not to do. Okay, what not to do. Yeah, oh, I'm not touching that thing. I got a 3-hour ride home. I'm not touching that thing at all. Okay. Getting back to it. So we've rigged our bait. We're now going to deploy this, okay? And for the sake of display purposes, my leader is substantially shorter than what it would be. So our bait is going out, and then right here, you'll notice a very small blood knot. So between my bait, I have 15 to 20 feet of 50-pound leader. 50-pound leader, 15 to 20 feet. And it's tied to my top shot of 80-pound with a small little blood knot. That little knot's right there on my thumb. I don't know if you can see it or not. Very streamlined, very small. If I have a big, snap swivel here, two things could happen. One, anybody? Seaweed. If I have a big snap right there, I'm likely or more likely to catch grass. And I don't want to catch grass because that could trip my planer and it's going to ruin my entire presentation. So I don't want a big snap there when I don't need a big snap there. And what's the other thing that could happen? It could break. It's a point of failure, or it could get eaten, okay, and get you cut off, because a lot of times the smaller snake kings, they'll see those shiny swivels going through the water. They think that's a small little shiny bait fish. They attack it, they eat it, and chop, chop, adios amigos, and you lose it all. So I try and avoid that terminal gear. So my leader itself to the hook, very stealthy, 50-pound. It doesn't need to be fluorocarbon, but 50-pound mono. If you want to use fluorocarbon, it definitely isn't going to hurt, but it's not necessary. From there, I have a top shot of 90 feet that goes to my braid. 90 feet, okay? Everybody follow me there? So my entire leader is approximately 100 feet. Now look what happens. Right here at the end of my 100-foot leader, which includes my 80-pound top shot, and then it goes to 10 to 20 feet of the 50-pound. Then I have a swivel. This is a very small swivel. It's called a heavy swivel. It looks like a little tube. It's not your typical barrel swivel. Again, you can take a close look at this when you come up here, okay? It's just a little heavy swivel. Some people call them Aussie swivels, like an Australian swivel. It's very tiny but incredibly strong. This tiny swivel right here is rated for 300-pound test, which is way overkill. I don't need a 300-pound swivel right here, but there's a reason why I have this 300-pound swivel, because anything smaller and the eye of the swivel, the little hole, is so small that I can't put my planer on here. Now understand that back in the day, okay, the way that planer fishing worked is you attached your planer to the end of a rod with a snap swivel. And off the back of the planer, and again we're going to use this Mac Daddy Jumbo Jim just so it's easy for everyone to see, okay, this is swimming through the water just like this. This is attached with a snap swivel right to the rod, right to the line. And off the back of this, there's another swivel right here, and there's a 100-foot leader that goes to a bait. I deploy that leader, which is usually wrapped around a yo-yo. Everybody follow me, one of those plastic yo-yos. I've got the 100-foot leader on. I've let that out behind the boat. I snap it to this swivel. I deploy this planer. It goes down in the water. It's now tracking like this. I get a bite. The planer goes straight. I fight this all the way to the boat. Once this gets to the boat, what do I have to do? I got a hand line that 100 feet, all right? And literally hand over hand. Very dangerous. Very dangerous because a lot of things can go wrong. First of all, this is swinging through the air, okay, for the most part. It's bam, right to the side of the boat. Bam, right into the side of the boat again. That ever happen to anybody? Okay, right? Or you try to leave it in the water, and you know, a lot of different things can go wrong. You're now hand lining 100 feet, and what you're doing is hand lining it, but the line, if you put it on the deck, you're just really asking for trouble because you're going to get tangled. So we generally hand line it back into the water. So for every foot you pull up, that loop in the water is getting larger. And now I'm hand lining a 50-pound wahoo. It's fun, it's exciting, but it's dangerous, and you end up losing a lot of fish. A lot of things can go wrong. We don't do that any longer. Okay, now we fish, I'm not going to call it a bridle system, I'll call it a jump system that allows us to fight that fish right to the boat by removing the planer altogether. Okay, completely removing the planer. So now we've let our bait out. It's behind the boat, and it's now 100 feet out. Everybody with me so far? You're all on the back of my CV. We're all fishing. We're all out there together. It's a big boat. I could fit everybody, okay? And we're all back there fishing, and now it's time for me to put my planer on. In this particular case, it's a number 8. Before I put it on, I want to show you how I have it rigged because this is really, really important. On the front of the planer is that same ring, just like on the big one that I just showed you for display purposes. And on that ring, I put a split ring and a large 300-pound ball-bearing snap swivel. But you'll notice at the end of the snap swivel, see that? Can everybody see that? I chopped off with a pair of wire cutters the little part that closes that snap. So this snap swivel no longer opens and closes. It's fixed in this position. It's just a hook. Basically, that's all that is just a hook right there. And it's exactly the same thing on the back. So there's a hook on the front and a hook on the back. Everybody with me there so far? Okay. So now I've let my bait out 100 feet, and I'm going to take the back of the planer. And using the little hook, I'm going to go right through the eye of that heavy swivel. Everybody see that? That's why you need that large eye. If you go to a smaller swivel, this does not fit in this hole. Okay, it just doesn't do it. So it's got to fit right in there. The next thing we do is take the front of our planer, the forward leading edge, and as you can see, approximately 24 inches away is exactly the same thing. Another little heavy swivel. It's identical to what's on the back. And we simply put that in the hole. Now, of course, the jumper in the middle, that's what we call this little section, is called the jumper. This has to be the right length, because if this is not long enough, you will not be able to fully trip your planer. I'm going to reel this up a little bit so you can maybe see it a little bit better from back there. Okay. So this planer now, again, is swimming just like that through the water. Everybody see that there? Okay, just like that. A fish eats the bait, and it straightens out. And now I fight this all the way to the boat. Once this planer gets up to the boat, we remove it very quickly, very easily. It just comes right off the swivels. And now you fight the fish. Put the rod under your arm, keep the rod in the rod holder. Look, boom, boom, boom. See how the swivels went right through the guides. Now you know why earlier I said you need large swivels. Okay, you need you need large guides, because these swivels have to go through those guides. So it's a very simple setup. Very, very simple, but so much easier than the way that it used to be done. Yes, you have to modify the planer by putting these snaps on here, but it's so simple. And it just takes a minute or two, and it literally is an absolute game changer. You no longer have to hand line that fish to the boat ever again, okay? And you can switch. You can say, okay, well, I don't want to fish a number 8. I want to fish a number 6, or whatever the case may be. That is how we rig our planer rods. Very, very simple, very effective. The swivels sit on the rod or on the reel, and that's it. Nothing more to it. Super simple. Everything goes right through. By the way, I missed the bite. That's what it looks like. And you know how I know I missed the bite? Because my rod was bent over because I was fishing the correct rod, okay? And I saw boom, just like that. It didn't trip the planer, but I saw that. I saw boom. And I went, oh man, we missed one. So you try and get them, like you can, try and jig the rod a little bit, reel a little bit, give it a little bit more action. But once you realize you're not getting a bite, you need to reel it all the way up and put on a new bait because it looks like that, okay? Now, you know how we're rigging. You know the rods, you know the reels, you know the line, you know the leader system, you know the bait. You're dialed in there. Now we go out and it's time to set our spread. The very first one that we're going to set, I'm looking off the back of the boat. There's the front of the boat. I'm looking off the back of the boat. I'm going to set my long bait first. My long bait is the smaller of the two planers. I've got a number 8 and I've got a number 4. The number 4 is going to swim shallower than the number 8. Everybody follow me with those basic fundamentals? Don't ask me, how deep will that swim? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I know it swims below the surface, and I know that this one swims deeper than this one. That's all I need to know. I don't need to know if it's 8 feet or 18 feet or 28 feet. All I need to know is that when I'm dragging 2 of these, that this is going to be here in the water column, and this is going to be here. That's all that matters to me, is that they're staggered right there. If I want them to go deeper, I can go to a number 5 or whatever the case may be. But real important that they're staggered. So the number 4, the smaller one, I like to fish it, remember that my leader is 100 feet. So before this even goes in the water, the bait's 100 feet behind the boat, before this even goes in the water. When I now put this in the water, at least 200 feet, if not 300 feet, get it back there. Get it back there, 200 to 300 feet behind the boat, okay? It's way back there. How do I know what 300, and we're going to use 300 just as a round number. How do I know what 300 feet is behind the boat? A Sharpie. In advance, I've measured 300 feet of line, and I took a Sharpie and went and drew a line at 300 feet right on the braid. So I know when I get to that black line, I'm at 300 feet. I mean, it's pretty simple. Once I get that set at 300 feet, the black line is right here. It's right on the reel. So I know I'm at 300 feet. Now it's time to put the larger bait out, the next one. I put the bait in the water. I now clip on my number 8 planer, and I want this one back as a round number, 100 feet. So I have 300 feet and 100 feet. But remember that at 100 feet, where's my bait? To approximately 200 feet behind the boat. You want your bait far away from the planer, because the planer going through the water, this thing going through the water is making a lot of noise. It's ugly. It's just gnarly, right? And if it goes by a fish's face, he's probably going the other way. So you want a big distance between the planer and the bait itself, right? You really want a big distance. So fish that 100-foot leader, real important. So again, the next bait I'm going to put out is going to be that number 8. I'm going to put it down 100 feet. Now, this is when the flat lines come into play. Flat lines have no weight. They have the exact same rig. This is the same rig. Keep everything consistent. The skirt, the little duster, okay, the sea witch might be a different color. You can adjust the weight of the sea witch. You can go to a little bit of a heavier weight if you wanted to. A lot of different variations here, but the rig itself is relatively the same, relatively universal. I could also, instead of this configuration, I can put a little, I don't know if I have any up here, but I'm sure they have them here. You could take like a little island lure, okay, and put that over a strip bait. All sorts, and a little chugger, put that over a strip bait. A lot of different variations. The point is, my 2 planers are set, and now my surface baits are going to be set as well. and I might fish one here, and I might take another one and put it way down the middle. If I have a big boat with outriggers, I may have 6 additional lines. So it really depends, on what you're going to do. But we really want to talk more about the planers, because now there's another real important element that comes into play. And that is the drag setting on your reel. Who knows what line creep is? Okay? If you don't know what line creep is, this is what line creep sounds like. Everybody hear it? Okay? That's what line creep, that's not what line creep sounds like. This is what line creep sounds like. Little bit at a time, you're trolling along, you've applied a lot of drag on your reel, and there's no line creep. Everything seems to be perfectly fine. And then you turn the boat. You were going north, and now you turn the boat and you're going south, and suddenly click, 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 click. Now there's line creep because the conditions are different. The current is different. The amount of pressure being put on the planer is different. So typically what most people do is this. Boop. Tighten up the drag, right? You tighten up that drag as tight as you possibly can until you don't have line creep, because you're thinking, hey, that's what I got to do. I have to prevent that planer from coming out on its own. And your drag is so tight because you're pulling a number 8 planer at 6 knots, 8 knots even on the high end, okay, but certainly 5 to 6 knots on the low end when you're pulling these strip baits. And there's so much pressure, being put on this outfit right here, and you're just tightening that drag more and more and more. And then this is what happens. Pow! What just happened?
Lost the whole rig.
Lost my whole rig. But you know what sucks even more? Is I lost the 50-pound wahoo that ate my bait that made me lose my entire rig. That hurts even more than losing my entire rig. And you go, what in the heck just happened? And it all happened so fast. It's like whack, pow, zing, pow, done. And you're like, oh my God. Okay? It literally happens that fast because you put so much drag on that reel. Here's how you avoid that. Can you guys hear that? Yeah. That's called line creep. Okay? So, follow me here. Line creep is your friend. Line creep is not a bad thing. Line creep requires you to actually be fishing the planer, meaning I'm going to apply drag, as much drag as I possibly can, but I'm certainly not going to lock down my reel. If I lock down that drag and there's no give whatsoever, I might as well just go home, because every bite that I get that's, short of a 5-pound snake, a small little king, any quality fish is going to break me off every time. Something is going to fail. There's, the knot at the hook. I've got 2 swivels in line. You've got a heavy, planer in there. Something is going to fail if there's no give. So you have to have some give. You have to have a little line creep. So here's an example, or here's a good rule of thumb. And we're going to use, like I said, round numbers, just to keep this very simple. Our first rod was set at what distance? 300 feet. And we have a black line right on the line, either with a magic marker, nail polish. Some guys will take a piece of braid and we'll do a series of half hitches. I don't care how you do it, you know where that 300-foot mark is. The next rod that was set at what depth? 100 feet has the same, has a mark on the line. Okay, so we know that that's at 100 feet. Well, now let's take 50 feet. And let's put a mark 50 feet away from our mark. So we have a mark at 50 feet and 100 feet. Everybody with me? And then we have a mark at 250 and 300. Guys with me? I'm not losing anybody, am I? Okay, so we have 2 marks on every line. I set my bait, instead of setting it to 300, I set it to the first mark. Instead of setting this to 100, I set it to the first mark at 50 feet. Both my baits are now staggered. just the way that I want them to be. They're staggered. This is here. This is 250 feet behind the boat, somewhere below the surface. I have no idea where, but it's somewhere below the surface. This is now 50 feet, much closer to the boat, but it's definitely a hell of a lot deeper than this is. At this point, I can do figure eights like this. Toot, 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 toot. I can turn back if I miss the bite. I can go back in circles. These two are not getting tangled. It's impossible for them to get tangled. Look how they're staggered. And the drag, if the conditions require me to have a little bit of line creep, because remember, if it's flat calm and there's no current, you don't need to worry about this because everything is consistent. But when there's a 3-foot swell and there's, 2 knots of current, depending on what direction you're going in, everything changes. So you may need to have some line creep. As long as they're both going out a little bit at a time, that's perfectly fine. And you look at your line. You started at 50, and it's going. You guys hear that? It's just slowly creeping. Okay, but look how much line is creeping out. I'm not talking about feet. I'm talking about inches. You know how long it's going to take for this to get down another 50 feet? It's going to take quite some time. A long time. Let it go. Let it go. Just sit there, watch it, let it go. If you get a fish on, that's what's going to happen. There's not going to be any zing pow. Okay, your drag is set perfectly. You're not going to lose anything. Let it go. And now, here comes your next mark. The official 100-foot mark. Or the official 300-foot mark. God, I love you guys. Okay? Now comes that mark. So now at this point, I know I'm exactly where I want to be, right? I'm exactly where I want to be. I could let them go a little bit more. There's no reason that I can't let them go a little bit more. They're both creeping out, nice and slowly, no big deal. I could let them go a little bit more, okay? And then at some point now I can go, okay, you know what? Now I feel like I'm a little bit too far out. Pull the throttles back, low gear, and crank. And crank up until you get back to 50 feet. And start over again. Okay? So yes, it requires you to be involved. But if there's multiple people on the boat, okay, Brandon, reel up that one. No, I know. Put the camera down. Reel that one up until you get to the black mark. Okay? I can do that. I've got autopilot on my boat. I can do it myself. You're fishing with a team of people on the boat. May it be your wife and son. She's your wife, right? All right, okay. May it be your friend, neighbor, fishing buddies, whatever it is, okay? You've got other people on the boat, and this is why the tackle is so important, the low gear. I don't have to trip the planer. I've slowed the boat down. I didn't put it in neutral, but I pulled the throttle all the way back. And I can put it in low gear and just slowly crank nice and comfortably and nonchalantly until I come back up to that mark. Now I push the boat back up to speed. And I do the whole thing over again. So I'm never jeopardizing fishing so much drag that I jeopardize losing a fish. Okay? That's planer fishing done the right way. Okay? Actively, not just setting it and forgetting it. Because if you set it and forget it, look, the vast majority of the time, you're going to be fine. You'll be fine, because the vast majority of the fish you catch are not going to be backbreakers. They're not going to be, 30, 40, 50, 60 pounds. The vast majority of the fish that you catch out here on strip baits are bonitas, football blackfins, kings that are under 20 pounds because all the big smoker tournament winning kings only like to eat goggle eyes. It's got to be an $8 bait or they won't eat it, okay? So for the most part, right, the vast majority of the fish are not going to do that to you because you've got heavy braid, your connections are bulletproof, everything is good, it's solid. But man, you get that big boy that comes along and eats that beautiful bait that they cut right there, all right, and eats that bait, that's your one shot. You may have 10 bites a day. You may have 20 bites, whatever it is. But what percentage of those bites are those quality fish? The fish that are going to be game changers. A very small percentage. And if you lose those fish, hey, what do you want? You're catching a 10-pound king mackerel. Don't complain. That's all you're capable of catching. Because you're not putting in the right amount of time and the effort, and you're not looking at it perhaps the way that I look at it. So you have to really focus on saying, hey, what do I have to do to land those bigger quality fish? Because if you do that, everything below that is going to come easy. You're going to catch all of those fish because you're ready for that one game changer, okay? And that's what this is about as well. Also, your connections. You know, we talked about these swivels, and again, I just want to show you this for a second. Here comes my jumper. That's what I'll call it. This piece right here, between these two swivels, not only does it have to be the right length, but it has to be the right strength, because you've got this planer that's running in between this right here. If this scratches, which it will eventually scratch up against the planer, in addition to that, you've got this big metal hook, okay, that you're putting in the eye of this swivel, and there's a knot that's tied also to that swivel. This is sharp right here. Look at that. That's sharp. Okay? Eventually, if you do not change this and update this, this is a breaking point. It's a premature tackle failure right there. You're going to get a fish on, or even you may not even get a fish on. You're just going to be trolling along and poof. What the? Did you just see that 60-pound wahoo eat my bait? Did you see that so fast? Ain't no 60-pound wahoo ate your bait, Dippy. That broke right there, okay, because you didn't change it after 22 trips. So what did you think was going to happen? So, you know, check it. Check your stuff. Avoid angler and tackle failure, okay? And every trip, you know, look at it all. It doesn't take much. So like I said, my braid here is 65 to 80 pounds. This should be no less than 100 pounds, maybe even heavier. If you can get away with 200 pounds, that's fine. You don't need anything more than that. But this jumper should definitely be heavier. Look at that length. Remember that that length has to also be long enough. If it's too short, this is what's going to happen. We're going to put our number 8 planer on here. There's the front end. There's the back end. Look, there's plenty of slack right there. Okay, plenty of slack. That's swimming perfectly through the water, just like that. Like I said, I get a bite, and it straightens out, and there's still a little bit of slack there. Everybody could see that hanging? If that was a little shorter, that's it. It doesn't straighten. And now I can't reel that planer up, you know, effectively, because it's not straight. It didn't trip all of the way. It only tripped halfway. It didn't trip all of the way. And you want it to trip all of the way. So the length of that jumper is really, really important. There are a lot of variations on this system. This is what I have found to be the easiest. Through experimenting, initially I started with putting, you know, you had asked me, do you put loops? And that's exactly what I did at first, is I put a dropper loop here and a dropper loop here. And over time, I realized that there's a better way, you know, because every time you fail, you go, okay, why did it fail? What could I do better? You know, how do I avoid that from happening again? So learn from my mistakes. Do it this way, and you'll really save a lot of time and energy. The same thing on the swivels. This is a 300-pound diamond ball bearing snap swivel. Don't use those cheap shit things from Kmart, okay? Don't use that stuff, please, because this will straighten. And when that straightens, the whole system is out of whack again. So nevertheless, I've set my planers, I've set my baits. Now it's time to find the fish, because just because you do it the right way and you're fishing the right baits doesn't mean you're going to go out there and catch fish after fish. You still have to present your offerings where fish are likely to be staged. And certainly when we're targeting, you know, I know when I'm planer fishing, I'm looking for one fish. What might that be?
50-pound wahoo.
That's right, baby. That wahoo. That's what I'm looking for, okay? So I think to myself, where's that wahoo going to be? And that's where I focus my efforts. I look at the color of the water. I make sure it's nice, clean water. I don't want there to be too much grass, because if there's too much seaweed and you're constantly getting weeded up, that grass is going to work its way down the line, get wrapped up all over that planer. It's going to trip the planer. It's just going to be a nightmare. So if there's way too much grass, don't planer fish. Go do something else. Go home. Okay, I don't know, go catch rosies. Go do something, okay? You got to stay away from real heavy grass. There's just no way to avoid that, okay? Wrecks, I always will focus my effort around wrecks, because I know that the food that the wahoo are eating is around wrecks. The bonitas, the blackfins, jacks, okay? Pretty much everything they eat at some point or another is around wrecks. So I'll certainly troll around wrecks. There's a lot of wrecks right outside the inlet here out of Hillsborough, just to the south. If you go down off of Fort Lauderdale, there's a series of wrecks. Of course, there's some off of Boca up there and even further north. So it's always a good idea to focus your efforts around that sort of structure. The depth of the water we talked about, 100 to 200 feet is where you want to spend the majority of your time, but don't be afraid to meander out deeper. The nice thing about this spread, I'm going to tell you too, if you get a couple planers in the water and you've got some strip baits up on top, you could essentially go out to 800 feet. There's no reason you can't. Go out to 800 feet. You know that you're decreasing your odds with sailfish and blackfins, cobias, or anything that might be associated with the reef. But dolphin, of course, that are out there. You have a shot for wahoo out there. So you could take this same trolling pattern, go out to deeper water, investigate. I like to say, hey, let's go stick our nose out there for a little while and see what's up. And sometimes you'll stick your nose out there and find something worth continuing to fish. Other times you'll stick your nose out there and go, what a mistake this was. Okay, we ain't nothing out here. Let's go back inside. And you turn around in the same pattern. You could just troll right back inshore. So it's a very versatile pattern, but for the most part, we're obviously fishing it right on the edge. And you'll be surprised on days, there's days where those planer baits will get all of the bites. We'll get all of the, every bite will come on a planer bait and none on the flat lines. There'll be other days you'll get all of your bites on the flat lines and none on the planer baits. I mean, that's fishing. There's no way for us to control that. By having both of those spreads, offerings up on the surface and offerings deeper in the water column, we're really increasing our odds tremendously. So at the end of the day, that's planer fishing. That's the way that we do it nowadays. Like I said, there's a lot of variation to it. Don't be afraid to experiment with different colors and size sea witches and things to that nature. Spend the required amount of time making sure that your gear is perfect. Control everything that you can control. And at the end of the day, there's no question you're going to be a more successful angler. Thank you. Seminar is over.